Let's fucking go. Fuck Boston. I gotta say it. Oh my God. Oh my God. Ah, man, what a victory. Yes, I'm fast with that one too. And I had to come on here tonight after this win. Fuck Boston. Let's go. Dean Wade coming in clutch in the fourth quarter. Props to JB was sticking with them out there after many people were calling for him to replace George Niang out there. My God, what a victory. What a thrilling comeback. And for those of you out there who don't like reverse language and are not tuning in for reactionary pod, I'm sorry. I don't know what the hell to tell you because tonight I'm cutting loose. I got my beer here. I'm ready to, you know, I'm just flabbergasted. What a hell of a victory, because this one felt like it was going to easily turn into a defeat. Back-to-back defeats against two of the better teams in the Eastern Conference was definitely on the line before drippy Dean Wade came back and saved the day. This man, I think they said what he scored 23 points in the fourth quarter. This dude was clutch, man. Let's talk about his fourth quarter, shall we? Just clutch triple after clutch triple, clutch rebound after clutch rebound, put back. Man, just will the real D Wade please stand up? It was just a phenomenal showing, guys. I know I'm going on here a little bit. I'm ranting, but I don't care. I got to give it to my guy Dean Wade, because a lot of people were giving Dean a lot of shit. They were giving him a lot of shit to before the season started. A lot of people didn't think that he should have been included in the rotation period. But man, oh man, a game on national television, this dude absolutely showed up and balled out in the fourth quarter. Jeez Louise. 8 of 11 on the night, 6 of 9 from three-point distance, 23 points total. I think, okay, let me correct myself. 21, I believe, in the fourth quarter. 21 in the fourth quarter. But still, geez Louise. This man single-handedly brought this team back down the stretch. There's a lot to talk about tonight, so I'll go ahead and start with this. I believe that one of the things that occurred to begin this game was terrible shot making, and just absolutely terrible shot making from that of the Cavaliers. And that is what contributed to them going down by 10 heading into the half, if I'm not mistaken. This game could have very easily been a hell of a lot worse had Boston just made some easy shots in that first half, but they didn't. And Cleveland, for what it's worth, they showed up on the defensive end. They absolutely showed up when it mattered as well in that second half. But Cleveland really, this game should have been a lot closer than it actually was. If they just knocked down their shots in that first half, things would have gone their way. And when I say that is they shot 32% from the field in the first half. Not from three-point distance, from the field. They shot 32% from the field in the first half. And that, my friends, is why this team just seemed to be heading swiftly towards a loss. They would finish the night off shooting 43.3% from the field. So that should tell you a lot right there. In that second half, they really turned it on. You really got to see guys knocking down some shots. And the offense came, obviously, from unlikely places, right? George Niang, for as much shit as he was taken from the fan base in tonight's game, even, he did have a couple of nice shots down the stretch that helped cut the lead, and he even tied the game at 99 all. That was him. He did that. He had a pretty nice defensive stand against Kristaps Porzingis down the stretch too, as well. And even though Kristaps ended up making the shot, I like the toughness out there, and that's one of the things that we know outside of the shot making that he brings to the table. He brings that toughness and that grit. He's not going to take any shit from anybody on a night, especially where the Cavs just look like they're getting punked again, out physical, outmanned. He showed up. He showed up, and so did Dean. And obviously, Dean was the biggest reason why this team won the game. But man, it's just surreal coming off of that New York loss, where it just seemed like we got punked. We got punked on national television. And I was very, very curious to see how this team would respond. And I was telling people all the live long day, on social media and in my day-to-day job, this team is going to respond. they're going to respond. They're going to have something to say. And it didn't look like it at first. I'll give you that. I'll give you that. If you were believing that this team was going to lose this game, you're not alone, right? They looked like they were trying to hand it to Boston by way of their shot making in that first half before they started to pick things up in the third and fourth quarters. But man, they responded in resounding fashion on national TV. And this is a Boston Celtics team that is head and shoulders above the rest of the Eastern Conference, if not the NBA itself. They are presumably going to finish with the number one seed. Nobody's going to catch them. That's just the way it is. And to be able to win this game, I don't care how you did it. You know, people are saying that game that we won with Max's game winner. People were talking about we needed that to save us in that game. And you could say whatever you want about tonight's victory, whether, you know, Dean Wade being the guy to get the job done tonight, whatever. A W is a W. And to knock off the number one seeded team in the East, that just feels good. That's a confidence booster. And the best part, you did that shit without your best player in Donovan Mitchell. You did that shit with Evan Mobley exiting in the third. The role player stepped up. That's what we were asking for. At one point, and TuneIn says 22-point comeback and ending Celtics 11-game win streak. Hell yeah, I will take that every day of the week, my friends. At one point, I believe it was a 32-6 run that the team had with, I think, starting at the 8-minute mark in the fourth quarter. They were scoring bucket after bucket. And the broadcast did a wonderful job of pointing this out. Boston at one point, they were limiting them to like 1-and-out possessions. It was a lot of isolation basketball out there. It wasn't a lot of ball movement like they had been doing in the first, second, and third quarters of the game. Cleveland just clamped down. They clamped down. They shut shit down. And I don't know, man. I don't know how you see this game and you don't give Dean Wade a regular allotment of minutes. Now, the one thing, it was cool, right, for Dean to get near starters minutes, and that wasn't even really the case, honestly. That really wasn't even the case when Evan Mobley and Darius Garland was out, because although Dean was starting, it was only nominal because he wasn't even getting starters minutes. Now that they're back, his minutes have been up and down. They've been fluctuating. I need to check to see over his last 5 games what the minutes are actually looking like, but I can tell you this, he's not getting consistent minutes. So just listen to this. 8 minutes, 9 minutes, 14 minutes, 19 minutes, 20 minutes. Prior to tonight's game, that was Dean Wade's minutes. Obviously, you can see the progression, right? 8 minutes against Washington, 9 against Dallas, 14 against Chicago, 19 against Detroit, 20 against New York. It's almost as if Cleveland saw what he could provide, and they're like, okay, JB saw this, and he's like, oh, we got to get Dean Wade out there. And obviously, some of that is by virtue of the Evan Mobley injury. Hopefully that's nothing serious. He left in the third with a left ankle sprain, if I'm not mistaken. So hopefully we get some good news on that if we haven't already. But there's absolutely no way Dean probably ends up playing 21 minutes tonight if that didn't happen. Case in point, my point in saying this is, JB, look at your rotations, sort this shit out, get it together. The guys who deserve to play, the guys who need to play, just they can space the floor, and Dean Wade is one of them. Sam Merrill is another, although Sam didn't obviously have a good game tonight, but I don't know how you view tonight's game and not keep Dean in that rotation. And I get the conundrum here is the George Niang of it all, right? The George Niang of it all is, well, this guy is a trusted veteran presence. He's coming off of 4 straight seasons shooting 40%, 5 straight seasons shooting 40% or better from three-point distance. And he has playoff success. He is a veteran presence out there, and he plays the power forward position. That's number one right there. Number two is that JB just doesn't usually trust the young talent that he has at his disposal. And although I don't consider Dean Wade young anymore, he's not necessarily old, right? He's 27 years old. And so with Dean, he obviously offers you more on the defensive side of the ball. He can space the floor. The volume isn't quite as high as Niang's, but on a night like this, you just got to give it to him. And anytime the Cavs need a real tangible piece of evidence to point to say how Dean Wade can affect the game, tonight is a perfect example that they can pull out of their ass, right? If somebody needs to go up to JB and say, look, dude, you got to play Dean Wade. This is the game you point to and say, this man can make shit happen. I know he got on the heater. I know that can happen from time to time. We have seen role players do this in the past, but Dean Wade is as consistent as they come lately. He is out there when he's taking the shot, when he's confident. That is typically a good thing out there because one, he can actually give you something on the defensive end, and two, he's not afraid to go out there and grab a rebound, right? You need that. You need that on, especially on a night where Mobley's getting bullied around and pumped by the likes of Luke Cornett, for God's sake. You need guys to go out there and get physical right back. And so the one thing that we know that worked for the Cavaliers during that big time win streak that they had without Evan Mobley and without Darius Garland is the staggering of the minutes. I see some of you down here already pointing to it. Jay Quest down here, that's exactly, this is my thoughts exactly. And I think that's what a lot of people believe. Jay Quest says, I'm sold on staggering JA and Mobley after this. And that's the logical thing, right? JB has been doing this dating back to last season. But the problem last season is you just didn't quite have the personnel to stagger the way that you would have wanted to, right? You didn't have anybody that could space the floor from that power forward or from that center position. This year is an entirely different case because Niang can do that, although he has been inconsistent this year. And Dean Wade obviously just showed you that he can do that shit, right? And those are two very key players. And so, in addition to that, you also have more spacing out of the forward group with Max Strus being available, with Sam Merrill coming on as a flamethrower. You have additional options out there that you can go to and surround your big man at the center position with 4 shooters. You can do that now. You could not do that last year. So that key is going to be staggering. But the problem is JB going to continue to do that when you have the personnel available, or is he going to fall back on old habits and go back to, the two big lineups when Mobley presumably returns to the lineup? Hopefully that ankle sprain isn't too bad. If any of you guys are seeing anything, because I haven't been able to check up on that. If you're seeing that, if you want to update me live, I'd love to hear it. But Jay Dias says Mobley and Allen shouldn't play together during certain matchups. And this is the thing with me. This is my line of thought, Jay. It is inevitable that you have to play those two together for a certain allotment of minutes, especially you're starting them, right? They're going to start. Now, if you decide that you're going to pull Evan Mobley, or you're going to pull Jarrett Allen as like the first person, right? You can do that because your first sub could then there be Dean Wade at the power forward position. You can either leave Jarrett Allen out there, or you can slide Evan Mobley over to the 5, and there you go. You got your spacing out of the 4. Or you could do the same thing with George Niang. And you can vice versa with Jarrett Allen, right? If you want to pull Dean Wade out there at the 4 and then Jarrett Allen out there at the 5, we have seen that work for large stretches during this season. They have the personnel to do it. That's what I'm trying to say. And it's all on JB to make this shit work. And so I absolutely loved what they were what they did tonight. Dr. Claus 77, good to see you, man. Couldn't have said it better myself. Dean Wade saved the vibes. Hell yeah, he did. Because we were swiftly heading for another defeat, and Cavs Twitter, social media, whatever you want to call it, it would have been lit ablaze again with terrible takes, with overreactions, or just pure emotion. And I get that. Some of the criticism is warranted, but a win like tonight against a premier opponent like the Boston Celtics, that should calm people down. That should shut people the hell up. At least for now, at least for the night, because this is the first half of a back-to-back. We do have an Atlanta Hawks team tomorrow. That should prove probably a little troublesome too, especially if you're going to be down Mobley. You're already down Max. You're already down Donovan Mitchell. And we didn't really get to see any of the two-way guys tonight. And so I'm curious to see, because we know JB didn't really do this on the other back-to-back not too long ago. I'm curious to see what JB's plan is on this latter half of the back-to-back, if he's going to give some of these two-way guys some run just to kind of keep the legs fresh out there, because you don't want to run these guys into the ground. You don't want to burn them out. And so, I don't know. Purely in reference to tonight's game, though, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows for the most part, as a lot of people are alluding to down here in the chat. Darius Garland did not have a good night shooting from the field. He playmaked a lot tonight. Playmade. I don't know. I don't know what the tense you use for that is. Stat line reads 21 points, 12 No, I'm sorry. Let me correct myself here. The stat line for Darius Garland reads 16 points, 11 assists, but he shot just 6 of 20 from the field tonight, including 3 of 8 from distance. And you know, that kind of encapsulates the night for a lot of other Cavs, especially in the first half. But Garland in particular really struggled from the field because the defense was keying in on him. And we knew that was going to end up being the case with no Donovan Mitchell out there. And then especially so once Evan Mobley got hurt. And so I don't know, man. I've viewed Garland through this spectrum. We need him to do more. He has to be better. He has to play better. But the one thing that I can say tonight is he took 20 shots, right? He was aggressive enough to pull the trigger when he felt he needed to. And that to me, I can live with, because a lot of people are saying, well, he looks timid. He doesn't have confidence. He doesn't have this aggression that players like Donovan Mitchell and Tyrese Maxey and Colin Sexton or whatever guard or other player out there that seems to play very aggressive all the time. Darius Garland, for what it's worth, he took 20 shots tonight. It wasn't great, right? Just 6 makes, but I will take that, especially on a night where he is out there throwing dimes to guys, getting guys involved. And the one thing outside of the shot making not being a real factor for him tonight is like the decision making, right? The ball handling, because DG, another night where he has 3 more turnovers, and that's kind of going to be something that it's going to be an ebb and flow, because you don't have Donovan out there. The usage rate is high. You don't have a ton of additional shot creators out there outside of maybe Karis LeVert and Isaac Okoro. At certain points, you start to elevate his level of play in terms of handle out there. But on a night like that, I'll take the 3 turnovers, especially if it's coming against the backdrop of 11 assists. And so it's not perfect, but I will say this. He does look a lot more confident out there. He does look like he is actively looking for his shot, and he is getting guys involved. And there's not much more else that I could ask for. He's just got to keep the aggression up, especially once Donovan Mitchell returns. Because a lot of this is we've seen Darius Garland be the number one option out there. Hell, we even see him play the 1B to Donovan Mitchell's 1A on occasion, but we rarely see the two have it going in the same game. And so the question still remains, can Darius Garland continue this certain surge of aggressiveness once Donovan comes back, or is he going to fall back into obscurity and just play the second or third fiddle at points? I hope not, but tonight's game, 20 shots, it does make me feel a little bit better about the aggressiveness. A lot of people think that he needs to get out of his own way, not force too many things out there, but it's going to be the nature of the beast when you have the ball in your hand so damn much as he did tonight. I love the performance overall by a couple of these Cavaliers in particular, though. Another one that I'm going to go ahead and reference here is Jarrett Allen. A night that looks completely 180 from his performance against the Knicks, where he's actually looking like he's playing a little bit more physical out there. I loved his performance because he was running the floor. He did do a lot better defensively, and he actually pulled down some boards tonight. 12 rebounds, 21 points, 9 of 16 from the field in his 35 minutes out there. And although the problem that you're going to have sometimes in matchups like this is that you have players like Al Horford, you have players like especially Kristaps Porzingis who can space the floor, and they will pull your bigs out of the painted area and out on that perimeter, and it allows teams to feast on that painted area sometimes, especially when you don't have Evan Mobley available. And sometimes that can kill the Cavs, because I literally watched Porzingis out there on the perimeter throw several key passes out there after pulling Allen out. That hurts. It's just the nature of the beast when you're facing an opponent like this that has several playmakers, including Porzingis. I will throw him in there because he is an underrated passer. But overall, Jarrett Allen, I thought he had a much better performance, especially coming off a game in which a lot of people were just saying the Cavs got bullied or got punked. And flat out, honestly, they did. They got punked on national television prior to tonight's game, right, against the Knicks. That was just a terrible showing. And so I loved how a number of these guys went out there and responded. Talking and Grubbing Media says, It's jacked up. Mobley went down when it seemed like he was starting to get it going. Yeah, I mean, he had a pretty rough first half, man. I gotta admit, he was getting moved around a hell of a lot more than I would have liked in that first half by Luke Cornett and Kristaps Porzingis. I did not love his I did not love his first half of basketball. It was kind of pitiful to me. He's got to get in the weight room again this offseason because teams, front courts are just pushing him around. And he's got to be a little bit more aggressive when going up with his shot at the rim because that one of these blocks that Cornette had on him is just bad, just bad. And Cornette was looking like a prime Dwight Howard out there on, blocking shots. It was just, it was ugly to watch at points, his game was. But he did start to round things out in that third quarter before going out. And I think that, a lot of people have been shitting on Mobley in regards to him not truly developing or not adding enough to his game this season. Well, I mean, he has, right? There are small things to his game that he has added. He has started to show a semblance again of that 3-point shot, although he's not pulling it as often as you would like. He is taking that mid-range jumper in a little bit more. And from a defensive standpoint, you already know what he can bring to the table. And even if he doesn't develop any further than this, a very efficient 15 points, 10 boards, 2 or 3 assists a game to go along with whatever he provides you on defense. That's still a hell of a lot of a contribution from your power forward, from your starting power forward. Tony Two-Turn says, what about Niang? Look, man, it's hit and miss. It is hit and miss with the Georges Niang minutes. When his shot is on, he can be impactful. We've seen that this year. We saw that against the Milwaukee Bucks earlier on when he had his career high, when he was just dropping shot after shot after shot. And we've seen it come and go. We've seen it be sporadic. He had that shot to tie the game tonight at 99 all. It's things like that warrant the minutes. But on the other half of the token, right, on the other side of the coin, it is lackluster play defensively. It is him being a non-factor in terms of shot making. And then that's when the Niang minutes look bad. And that's when you get people calling for Dean Wade, and rightfully so, right? And that's a big reason why when I did my initial lineup for the postseason, I did not include Niang in my 9-man rotation for the playoffs, because I just felt like whatever Dean Wade is able to give you from a shot making perspective, combined with his elevated defensive play, is that he offers you more, especially against specific matchups, than a Georges Niang can. And that's why I initially had him out of my postseason rotation. But he'll have the occasional moment during a game where it's like, okay, I can see why they're giving you minutes. I can see why Georges Niang is receiving minutes. And I spoke to this a little bit early on. It's because JB, he's trusting of the veterans out there. He's trusting of a guy who was coming off of those 5 straight seasons, shooting 40% or better from 3-point distance. And in certain matchups, he can provide you with a decent level of defense against slower footed bigs out there, right? We've seen it in the past before. And then Freddie B says G-Wagon was giving the energy we needed on defense. Yeah, I mean, like I said, like I mentioned earlier on, there was a possession in that fourth quarter where Niang, especially at the end of the game, where Niang just kind of stood up there, showed some verticality against a much, much bigger player in Kristaps Porzingis. And although Porzingis ended up making the shot, it was still nice to see somebody standing up to Porzingis and not budging, especially when you have this team trying to beat those soft allegations. Tom K says, Niang does better against less athletic bigs. Kristaps can space, but doesn't have burst or bounce. Yeah, I mean, we saw him play a considerable role against Julius Randle in some of these Knicks matchups prior to Randle going down, right, at the earlier point of the year. So Niang can do that. It's just that he will get exposed against more athletic bigs. And then that's when you can say, okay, fuck it, put Dean out there. This is not a good matchup for George. And honestly, I think that's the best way to probably go about it in the postseason. Dean Wade has to play. Georges Niang will have to play at certain points, depending upon how Dean Wade is shooting the ball. But at the end of the day, it's all going to be matchup dependent. I think that's how you have to view it at this point. And that, to a certain degree,
that kind of plays a factor in the minutes for Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen as well, especially if you're planning on staggering the minutes there with that second unit, like JB has throughout the season. And JB really, honestly, once we get this full complement of players back, full complement of starters, JB has to get back to doing that. And that has been one of my issues with JB this year, is that JB at points, when he is forced to play certain players, those players usually go off. Right? Like we saw Merrill do that the other night when he dropped 7 triples, if I'm not mistaken, against New York. And he is not a regular rotation. He's not a regular rotation piece. We've seen Craig Porter Jr. do much the same, have big games and moments that rookies just probably shouldn't have. But JB being forced to play him and him not really including Craig in the rotation for much of the season. And so my issue with JB is that when you do have your full set of players back, you have to do a better job of managing your rotations to play with their strengths, right? You have to stagger the minutes of this front court, especially. You have to do it. You have to surround your 5-man with 4 shooters. You have to do that consistently. And I really, truly hope that JB, through games like this, is seeing that, because some of the best performances that we have gotten out of this Cavaliers group is when the Cavs are either 1, gone small, or 2, have 4 shooters around one of Jarrett Allen or Evan Mobley. It's just, that's where I'm at. Right. A lot of people accuse me of being a JB apologist or, just defending him no matter what. Look, guys, I got eyeballs. I'm not blind. I see these things. But the difference between me and the average fan is that I'm trying to exercise a little bit of patience here, because I also realize that JB has gotten him to a certain point. And one of the things that I heard somebody, I think it was Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. I do not agree with a lot of things that are said on that show, but one of the things that really, really stuck out to me, and not necessarily that I agree with, but one of the things that really I remember very vividly from a recent episode was from G. Bush, who said JB is basically a coach who will get your young players there, but he is not the guy to get the job done. A lot of people are of that mindset. A lot of people believe that that JB Bickerstaff is like the Mark Jackson to whoever's Steve Kerr, right? A lot of people are of that mindset. And I'm not going to beat people up about it, but the simple fact of the matter is there has been a steady elevation, at least during the regular season, for JB. And so I'm trying to exercise patience with JB. If he flukes and has another poor showing in the postseason, you fire his ass. That's just the nature of the beast, especially when you have so much on the line with Donovan Mitchell, right? And so I'm trying to give JB his due and be patient with him. But I got to admit, like, you got to do better with your rotations. You got to stagger these minutes a little bit better. You got to draw up some offensive sets for some of these guys. You got to get certain guys more involved. And you got to know when to call a timeout. Jesus, JB, you have got to learn how to call a timeout when a team is going on a run or you need to halt momentum. That's been another one of my big issues with him this season, is not knowing the flow of a game, right? It's just one of those things. He's by no means a perfect coach, but at the same time, I just urge people to be a little bit more patient. And that's where I'm at with JB at this point. But man, rant aside, just a thrilling comeback tonight. And I could not be more and more proud of a player like Dean Wade, who has just scratched and clawed his way to this rotation. And he usually comes up when you need him, right? Getting that contract, first off, people were thinking that he was overpaid. Man, if you look at these contracts these days, Dean Wade is by no means overpaid. He's actually on a very, very friendly contract. And the same can be said to a degree for George Niang, right? If you eventually need to move on from either of those two. But tonight just shows you that Dean Wade has a hell of a lot of value off that Cavaliers bench. And if you have to end up starting him, if Evan Mobley has to miss time, we shouldn't skip a beat, right? And look, I know that Donovan's going to be out, and Donovan was a huge factor of getting Dean Wade involved in those like DG-less performances when Evan and DG were out. But Darius Garland should be able to keep things flowing, right? He should be able to get Dean Wade some good looks. But my issue is that with so many guys missing time, what are you going to do with that bench? If you have to pull Dean into the starting lineup, what are you going to do? Are you going to completely rely upon George Niang to give you those backup 4 minutes? I don't know. Are you going to pull Pete Nance into the fold? I think I saw Pete out there on the bench tonight. Are you gonna get Emoni Bates some minutes finally? Maybe even Isaiah Mobley. I don't know, but I am legitimately concerned about that if Evan has to miss some time, especially with Donovan already going to be missing the next few games, and then I don't know how long Max will be out. He may be back soon. I don't know, but yeah. It does leave me a little bit concerned, but the flexibility that you have from some of these guys should be able to make up for that, right? We know that Craig Porter Jr. is going to continue to see minutes without Donovan out there. We know that Sam Merrill is going to continue to see consistent run without these guys out there. And then hopefully whatever you can get out of some of these two-way guys should be able to help you overcome whatever you've lost. Tom K says, was hoping to see some Pete Nance until Dean went supernova. I thought that was where the game was heading, honestly, Tom, until Dean Wade. Yeah, he went supernova. He literally went ballistic in that fourth quarter, scoring 21, I believe, of his 23 total points on the night in that fourth quarter. Had that not happened, had this Cavs team been primed to lose, you probably would have gotten some two-way guy minutes down the stretch. But I'm okay with that, right? Like, sit them dudes down if you don't need them. But when you do, or when you're trying to keep some of the legs fresh, like tomorrow's matchup, hopefully you get to see some of the two-way minutes because you don't want to put too much on Darius. You don't want to put too much on Jarrett and others. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I was kind of hoping to see Pete Nance though. Lord Luke says, I'm assuming you meant offense. Did the offense start flowing more with Wade at the 4 once Evan went out of the game? Just curious because I missed the whole entire game. Look, man, I'll say this. It did and it didn't. D-Wade is not always going to go nuclear like he did tonight. But I'd be lying if I said, hey, man, the ball was skipping around a little bit more and there was more spacing out there. We're all aware of that, right? We know the difference, the stark contrast in spacing that playing Dean Wade at the starting 4 position can give you as opposed to Evan Mobley, because there are obvious trade-offs, right? Dean Wade is by far the best, maybe not the best floor spacing option. I'd still maybe consider George Niang a more consistent shooter than Dean Wade. But Dean Wade, when he is confident and he's actually taking more than 2 or 3 shots a game, he can be really, really impactful. And I say all that to say that Dean is a better floor spacer than Evan Mobley. And so you will see that difference being made out there on a night-to-night basis when you have those minutes out there. And so I'm not going to use tonight's game, as I know some people might, to suggest that we should start Dean Wade from now on, because I've already seen that happen in a lot of cases, especially during that huge win streak that we had this year. But yes, there are obvious advantages. I'll put it that way. There are obvious advantages to playing Dean Wade beside a Jarrett Allen out there. And the same can be said if you're playing Dean Wade next to Evan Mobley when Mobley slides over to the 5. It's just the nature of not having 2 non-spacing bigs out there in Jarrett and Evan to a degree. All right. And so caveats. There are pros and cons. That's the way that I look at it. Dean Wade, with Evan Mobley healthy, Dean Wade, there's no way in hell Dean Wade should start. But Dean Wade should get a heavy allotment of minutes, and he should be part of the minute staggering that JB is going to inevitably have to turn to in the postseason. Tune In says, actually, Talking Grub Media says, Tune In One Sports, he hasn't gotten any passes since he's been hired. Yeah, I'm assuming that's in reference to JB. No, nobody's giving JB any passes. That's just one of those things, right? If the team fails, the first to go is JB, or the first to take blame is going to be JB. When the team wins, JB gets some credit, but not as much as he probably should. That's just the gig, right? That's just what being a head coach is like. But man, I'm just so stoked that the Cavs were able to go on that run tonight and quiet some of the noise, because it was really going to get ugly there, folks. Social media in general was probably just going to be lit ablaze, and I probably would have had to take a step back because people are already at my neck about my my optimism in regards to this team. So I don't know, man. I'm good. Ben Yoder says 2 crazy comebacks against elite teams in the last week, both thanks to 2 role players stepping up when it was needed most. Ben, you could not be more correct. If you look at some of the championship runs, some of the great championship runs in NBA history, it wasn't the stars that came up big. A lot of the times, it was the role player. It was the Ray Allens of the world, the J.R. Smiths, the Tristan Thompsons, right? It was the role players that come up big time and time again, because the stars usually take attention away from them, where people just don't game plan for the role players. Nobody's game planning for Dean Wade, but Dean Wade can make you regret not game planning for him. But yeah, that's a solid point. I hope people will pick that up too as well. Yes, Richard Jefferson. Thank you, Talking to Grub Media. There's countless examples. Big Shot Bob, he comes to mind. There are countless examples of role players coming up big when it mattered most. Jake West says Wade doesn't only have outside shooting in his bag, though. I was blown away at his Kansas highlights, and he was flashing some of that tonight. Yeah, he's not a one-dimensional player, but oftentimes when you get put into a role, Jake West, a lot of times fans in general just expect you to do that, right? They just expect you to be a 3-and-D wing, or just to go out there and space the floor or play defense. And as a role player, a lot of times that's how we view these guys. That's the lens that we view a lot of these guys out of. But at the end of the day, they're not one-dimensional players. It's the same as Sam Merrill, right? Merrill, a lot of the average fan, the casual viewer, might just view Sam as a simple shooter, when he is so much more. The gravity that he generates out there when simply moving and navigating around screens and setting defenses into a frenzy, having to chase him around out there. That is such a big thing to have at your disposal unto itself. He's also a underrated playmaker, and he is actually better defensively than a lot of people think he is. And so that's just another case of a guy being not one-dimensional. Tom K says Sam Merrill is on scattering reports, much harder for him recently. Yeah, I mean, we knew that was going to happen, right? We knew that eventually was going to be the case, with teams knowing, hey, there's this dude, he can shoot the ball really well. We're not going to let him get it. And that was the case. That has been the case for him in some matchups. We saw that against the Los Angeles Clippers, where some of the more athletic wings that they have out there were kind of taking advantage of that, and they were chasing and flying around screens to make sure that no easy shot was had. It was the same thing for Merrill tonight to a degree, although I will admit there were some shots that Merrill probably could have made. But I think one comes to mind is when he got blocked. I forget who blocked him, but they're not giving him an inch of space usually when teams don't get beat going around the screen or something like that, or out in transition. They will make sure that Sam Merrill has a body attached to him, and so he might struggle a little bit more than we're used to seeing him now that he is on team scouting reports. And you can bet your ass that he was on the Boston Celtics radar, especially coming off a night in which he just drilled 7 more triples to knock down his 100th of the year. And I think after tonight's game, Sam is now sitting at, if I'm not mistaken, I think Sam Merrill has now made 102 triples on the season, which is just crazy considering the amount of minutes that he has played this year and the amount of appearances that he's had. Just crazy. He's already in the top 50 in Cavs history for 3-point makes, which is just crazy to me. There's a number of Cavs on this roster that are also sharing in that as well. Darius Garland's in there, Donovan Mitchell, obviously, after the season he had last year. George Niang, I believe, has cracked that top 50. Max Strus is there. Isaac Okoro, guys who have been here for a couple of years, obviously, but the first year players here like Max and George and Sam, that is crazy to me. And that just goes to show like the shift in the game and the evolution of the game, because you wouldn't think that a guy who has only played in, I don't know how many games has Sam appeared in this year. I want to say maybe I don't know. I need to double check this, but Sam hasn't appeared in 43 games. 43 games, including tonight, should not have you in the top 50 of a team's all-time list for three-point shooting. That's insane to me. I know I'm rambling here, folks, but after tonight's victory, I had to go a little bit sideways here because people were driving me crazy with some of these takes. And here's the thing. Here's the thing that I have to get people to understand, especially after that Knicks loss. There is absolutely nothing that this Cavaliers team could do in the regular season that will change people's minds. There's nothing that they can do. That loss against New York, yeah, that hurt things. That made Cleveland look like a laughingstock yet again on the national stage. But a win like tonight, it doesn't do anything either in regards to showing that they're the real deal. It's a solid enough victory. It's a confidence booster, right? That's definitely number one, and it helps you keep pace in the standings. These things are all true. But what is also true is that it's important not to get too high, and it's also important to not get too low on these wins and losses during the regular season, because ultimately this team is going to be judged by what they do in the playoffs. They won 51 games last year. That was phenomenal. It was a fun-ass season. And then they wet the bed come the Knicks series. We know what happened. And so the same thing is going to be on people's minds, frankly, until they prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that they are for real by winning in the playoffs. And so I say all that to say, yes, tonight's victory was phenomenal. Can't get too high. Yes, that loss against the New York Knicks was also equally terrible. Can't get too low. Just understand that this is just a process, and that although you're going to see some crazy things like this happen tonight, it is important to remain even keeled. And that is where I'm at with this team. I'm past the point probably of calling them a title contender, because honestly, that's just not where they're at, right? That is just me being optimistic. It may not be a realistic goal. It may not be an attainable goal, but I'll tell you this team, if they play like they did in this fourth quarter tonight, they are capable of hanging in with everybody. But obviously the caveat with that being is Dean Wade is not going to go nuclear every night. But again, this was a confidence booster, a much needed win. And it is also going to be, it is also the first half of a back-to-back, right? And so the Cavs, they have to play their cards right. They can no longer afford to just fuck around. Honestly, they cannot afford to fuck around, or they're going to fall down the standings. You have got to start putting some distance between yourself and some of these teams that are below you, right? Especially if you want to stay in the top 3 range, if you want to earn a top 3 seed and pick up what I deem to be an easier matchup, right? In the 6 to 7 seed range. It's important for this team to continue to do that. And tonight's victory obviously helps them stay and keep pace in the standings, but tomorrow's victory could also go a long way in helping them achieve that. You got to beat the teams that you're supposed to beat. They got to beat Atlanta. Minnesota's going to be a tough one. There's some doozies, right? Now, some doozies coming up on this schedule. And we knew that this latter half of the season was going to have a few of those, but if you would have asked a lot of fans, especially people that are outside of Cleveland, if you would have asked them if Cleveland would have beat Boston tonight, especially without Donovan Mitchell, they would have told you no. And a lot of people telling me tonight, especially on social Twitter, for instance, that this team had no chance tonight. And for a lot of it, they played like they didn't. They played like they were going to be handed that second straight L. But it was for naught. Right? They ended up securing the W, and they did so in impressive fashion. And so I couldn't be any happier about that. That said, I'm over the moon right now. I don't even know how I'm going to close this episode, but I got to say this. As I always tell you guys, if you'd like to reach out to me, you know how you can. It's Cavalier_pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and more. If you'd like to be added to the It's Cavalier Discord chat, you know what to do. Leave a rating, the reviews, and a screenshot, set a review to itscavalier53@gmail.com, and I will send you an invite. It is definitely been a hell of a night, guys. Thank you for always having my back out there. Some of you, thank you for coming into these live streams. I know that it sometimes they can run a little bit long, and sometimes they can get late, but I truly do appreciate you guys' support. I really do, more than you know. And thank you for putting up with my positivity. I know I grade on a lot of people. I know a lot of people think that I'm just unrealistic, but I truly do appreciate each and every single one of you guys that tune in. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. You never know what you might find. I got some content dropping tomorrow. It is a Cavs retrospective series, another edition in that. I think I'm going to go roll with an episodic format for this next one and have to break it up because it's a doozy. It's a long one, and I think you guys are going to enjoy it. But like it up, thumb it up. You guys know what to do. That said, go Cavs. Have a good night.